you.
Okay, so we are here today to talk about the BedandBreakfast.com breakfast tournament, and let's get started. I have contacted a number of the former winners and talked to a number of photographers, and what you're going to see here are some tips that you're going to get from a lot of those who've had success in the tournament. Don't forget that you will have access to this presentation afterward, because there's a lot of words on my slides, and you're probably going to want to go back and read them again and look at some of these links that are too long to write down right now. So don't worry, you'll have access to this presentation afterward, and you can listen now and go back and look at it again later. So here we go. You're going to want to submit your best savory breakfast recipe, as Candace said, by February 18th to BedandBreakfast.com. They've had a lot of recipes for sweet breakfast ideas. And so this year, BedandBreakfast.com decided that they're going to focus just on savory breakfast ideas. So go through that recipe box. I know the sweet ones are ones that you love, but they've asked everyone to focus on savory breakfast ideas this year. So what you're going to do is submit your recipes to the link below, and that link is also on BedandBreakfast.com too, and in all the materials that you've been getting about the recipe contest, about the breakfast contest. With your recipe, you are allowed to submit one photo online, just one via the entry form. But if you have additional photos that you'd like to provide, you can email them to marketingservices@BedandBreakfast.com. The recipes will be judged on uniqueness, creativity, and visual appeal. So we're going to talk a lot about the whole visual appeal part of your recipe, because the better the photo, the better your chances of progressing through the competition. That's really, really important. Also remember that the recipe is just for one dish. It may include, for example, a dish with a sauce like the lemon souffle pancakes with blueberry compote, but it cannot be a multi-plate recipe like French toast, scrambled eggs, and caramelized maple bacon. So it has to be just one recipe. And just for newcomers, this is how it works. The breakfast tournament works in brackets, a lot like the NCAA basketball March Madness. So first, BedandBreakfast.com will narrow down the entries to the top 32. In the past, they've had about, last year they had about 100 recipes that were submitted. And each year that number of recipe goes up by about 10%, which will be submitted. So look, your competition, if you're planning to do it this year, will be about 110 recipes. That means that 1 out of every 3 or so will be chosen. So first, BedandBreakfast.com will narrow it down the entries to the top 32. Then a panel of guest judges who are often food writers or foodie, food celebrities will narrow that 32 down to the final 16. Then at the end of March, the 16 will be voted on daily on the BedandBreakfast.com's Facebook page until there is a winning recipe. So there will be, we're going to talk a little bit about this at the end of this webinar, about how to get the votes out and how to get eyeballs on your recipes if you're one of the winners. The prize, the winning B&B, the winning recipe, and Innkeeper will receive a $500 Williams-Sonoma gift card. But more importantly, the bragging rights. And the real prizes in the publicity. In the past years, the winners and runners-up have been featured in a lot of national media, including NBC News, USA Today, Food Network, and more. In fact, Susan, if she's on, Susan Steffen, if she's on right now, may be able to tell us later about how she was contacted by the Food Network to participate in the season 2 of the Holiday Baking Championship, after the casting staff there found her recipe online and on BedandBreakfast.com. So just imagine, your recipe could go viral, and you too could be cast in a cooking show on the Food Network, Travel Network, or any of the others too. And it doesn't have to be just national media either. A lot of the winners have received a lot of local acclaim, local and regional acclaim, which you can make sure that you do by letting people know once you are the winner. So let's look at some of the tips that I got from Innkeepers, and we're going to start with choosing the right recipe. Leanne Saylor from the Weller House B&B said, I chose a recipe submitted because it was one of the most requested by our guests. And this is important. You know that's going to be a popular recipe then. This is also one of her personal favorites, and she won for the Bananas Foster style banana pecan stuffed French toast. Ooh, that's a mouthful, and it looks like a mouthful too, doesn't it? You want to also find a recipe with a great story, because again, if you're a winner, then the media and your guests and you will be talking about that recipe. So to be able to have a recipe that was inspired, for example, from the wedding cake at the Chestnut Street Inn, from the Chestnut Street Inn's Innkeeper, it makes for a great story. It also combines classic flavors and wonderful visual appeal too. Plus, and it includes ingredients that can be sourced from local farms. So they know that they have a winning combination here with a recipe that looks beautiful, can be made with local ingredients, so it's going to taste wonderful, it's going to photograph well, and those are all good components to a winning recipe. Susan from the Farmer's Guest House tells us, don't make the recipe too complicated, because remember, you will be requested to make that breakfast over and over again by future guests when everybody hears about you being the winner. I loved this story that came from Monica at the Chestnut Street Inn. Again, it was for their Elvis toast with candied bacon. And because they used to live in Las Vegas, they created this wonderful breakfast recipe, since Elvis was the king of the Strip. And it was a play on their favorite food, which was peanut butter, banana, and bacon, which they turned into a sandwich. Again, they literally called it the king of breakfasts, which was great. And again, it photographed well, so it had a lot of visual appeal, plus it was a often asked for recipe, and who wouldn't love a combination of peanut butter, banana, and bacon? I would love it, but and you couldn't eat that all that often, probably. You find a recipe with a universal appeal that photographs well. So Susan again said she selected a unique and locally sourced breakfast that had a great curb appeal, so that it looked really beautiful as well as tasting incredibly great too. These are all tips from winners for great recipe ideas. And so as you can see, we saw this theme over and over again. When choosing the perfect recipe, it should be a dish that photographs very, very well, says Kathleen from the 1837 Cobblestone Cottage B&B. And look at that beautiful recipe and how beautifully it was photographed too. Taking that idea a little bit further, Nicole at Brayton B&B tells us, make sure there's vibrant colors in your recipe. For example, red peppers, cherries, blueberries, and meats just don't typically photograph that well, although I've seen some pretty nice photographs of meat here. She says, make it look like it pops out on the screen, like you could dip your spoon right into it. So we're going to go and look at a few of the important aspects for photographing recipes, and which ones are going to look great and which ones might not. This is a photograph that was provided by Elizabeth Campbell Photography. And as she says, a lot of times what innkeepers see is this, but what they photograph is this down here. And as you can see, this one on top has enormous visual appeal. This one down here, maybe not so much. So make sure that what you're seeing in the camera is what you're seeing in your mind's eye is actually what the camera is seeing too. Nicole, again, at Brayton B&B says, get a close-up, preferably on a white or a solid color plate. And as I looked through a lot of the food photography in creating this webinar, I realized that was so true. All these beautiful photos are on have very simple backgrounds, and so that you can your eye will really focus just on that food. Susan tells us to make the photo entirely about the recipe and don't have any other food in the photo. Keep it looking fresh. I thought this photo here did a great job of that. This photo down here, you can see, has a lot going on. Yes, it's a picture of a breakfast, and yes, it looks delicious, but you've also got orange juice, flowers, coffee, some ham that doesn't look all that appealing. So remember, keep the focus on the recipe and on that beautiful food. We're going to talk a lot about light here. And Kathleen Loverty from the 1837 Cobblestone Cottage explains it pretty well. She says the most important thing to remember when photographing is that you need natural light. She says you also need a real camera. I'm not so sure I agree with that. And actually, the guys at Jumping Rocks take a lot of pictures with their iPhone, but it depends on the phone that you have. So Kathleen's saying make sure that you're using a real camera. I'd say make sure you're using a camera that you're most comfortable with and that you know does a great job. She says Kathleen has a huge window in her kitchen, and that's where she takes 99% of the pictures of food that she puts up on her website, and which she has also submitted to the contest. Leanne at Weller House B&B says that she has a local photography that does all of their photography of their rooms and they're changing decor. And she used that local photographer to come in and take pictures of her recipes. She says, so if you don't have photography skills, find somebody local, even if you contact local colleges for fine arts, graphic design students that may be willing to do it for free or for their portfolio or for a nominal fee. I thought this was really good advice, because if you try and feel that you have not succeeded in capturing that beautiful photo of your recipe, find somebody who can, because that visual appeal is a really important part of the judging. So here we're going to move on to some tips from the pros. Elizabeth Campbell again says some food really does taste better than it looks. For instance, sausage, gravy, and biscuits is delicious, but food photographers hate to shoot it because it looks unappetizing, even in the best of conditions. So remember, in choosing your recipe, just because it's tasty doesn't mean it's photogenic. I thought that this photo here did a really good job at showing that. I think that this is a good picture of sausage and gravy on biscuits, but it's just not an appealing dish. And that would, in this case, or in any kind of a breakfast tournament, recipe contest, you're going to need to be able to really capture the beauty and the taste of that recipe in your photo. The guys at Jumping Rocks say keep the food and the propping simple. Keep it simple. I think that's a really important thing to remember. Stay away from heavily patterned plates, placemats, colors, or textures that fight with the food. The goal is to highlight the food and make the viewer's mouth water. And the viewers should be able to relate to the food. It should be something that they recognize. And I just loved this picture of breakfast at Glassburn Inn. Glassburn Inn is in Pennsylvania, and the inn is converted barns. And this food really does capture the whole feel of the inn. But you could look at that food and you recognize it, and you know how wonderful it's going to taste. Again, Jumping Rocks says the viewer should be able to easily relate to the food. More recognizable dishes are best. Stay away from soufflés, they fall, or overly complicated dishes that require a long verbal description to tell the story. I thought that was excellent advice, a really good advice. And look at that beautiful photo too of something that, you know, all of those ingredients you recognize, but you would want to bite that into it so quickly because it looks so great. I often notice when a food picture or any kind of a visual image adds a sense of life. And again, the Jumping Rocks guy said, what takes a photo from great to awesome? It's that sense of light, a captured movement or a moment. And they say in food photos, you can get that through steam coming off a plate, or an action shot of sauce or syrup being poured, or a hand flipping an omelet. I just thought that this photo right here of steam coming off that souffle, which they say you shouldn't photograph because they do fall, but only they know how to photograph it, I think. Anyway, it captures a moment, and it just does such a beautiful job of conveying a delicious recipe. Elizabeth Campbell again says, get in close. And I thought this was great advice. Get in close and just above the level of the food. Most spontaneous food shots tend to be taken from an awkward distance or an angle. As you remember that picture of the table with all the stuff around it. They didn't come in close on the food. They came in on, you know, they pulled back on that whole table, and it did a disservice to the wonderful food that was being served. So she says, get right in there and snap the picture from slightly above the dish. Oh, by the way, that is one of the winning recipes from one of the past, I think it was a 2016 recipe that was one of the winners. So they obviously did a good job of getting in close, and that's kind of a winning recipe and a winning photo at the same time. Okay, so backlighting. Backlighting is the key to bringing out the texture and the dimension of the food. As we've heard already, the advice is pick a bright window with direct exposure. Then you want to diffuse it with perhaps a piece of vellum, some window shares, wax paper, parchment paper, or Jumping Rocks folks say you can even get creative with lace. And what you'll do is you'll set up a table in front of the window and get a couple of whiteboards to reflect that window light back onto the food. They say get a small makeup mirror or wrap a brick in foil and use that to open up the shadows on the dark side of the food. Backlighting is the key to bringing out that texture, the dimension, and the color of the food. Real important, I think, here. And I loved this. And again, you'll want to go back and take a look at this probably later, but here's a diagram that Jumping Rocks actually even posted on one of their blogs on exactly how you would take this picture. Here's the food in the middle, here's your window and the diffused light coming through it. Your whiteboards are on either side, and your mirror or foil is right in front of it so that the light can jump off those whiteboards and reflect off this mirror, and your picture is going to be a real winner. Food styling. If anyone knows all about styling, it's a professional photographer like Jumping Rocks. So they say from the cooking to the assembly of the plate, everything that you do with this plate should be in the service of telling the story of the recipe. So if you're shooting an omelet, construct the omelet in a way that a viewer can tell what kind of omelet it is without a caption. When you look at this picture, you know that it's a wonderful omelet, and you really have a good sense of what's in it. Don't over garnish, they say. And I like this idea because often we see powdered sugar, parsley, sauces covering a recipe so that you can't even tell what it is. That sauce has got to be can't cover it. It's got to be the garnish that makes that photo and makes the recipe look good and taste good, but not overpower it. One trick that the Jumping Rocks guys told me that they often employ is accentuating that three-dimensional aspect. So you might not necessarily serve your guests a stack of 6 pancakes high, but you would want to do that in the picture just to really give a sense of what it is and give it kind of that three-dimensional look. And another thing I thought was a really good idea was when you photograph your recipe, add your sauce or your garnish at the end, at the last minute, because the sauce will often get, make your recipe soggy. Herbs or flowers or edible flowers might wilt in the sun or in the light. You just never know. So you want to make sure that you add those at the very end so they're at their peak of freshness and brilliance. Now, so for most people, most innkeepers are not professional photographers. Some are better than others, and some are really good, because of social media probably, at creating photos. But if at first you don't succeed, try and try and try. Your first picture is not going to come out as well as the 15th one and as well as the 30th one. So don't be afraid to keep taking pictures, keep trying, keep resetting it up, maybe different angles, maybe different light, till you get a picture that you're really happy with. Okay, now you've been nominated. Let's say you've been nominated. You're down to the top 32, and no, you're down to the top 16. Let's say you're down to the food. BedandBreakfast.com has chosen your recipe, and the judges have chosen your recipe, and you are excited. You're among the top 16 people, and the brackets are going to begin. How do you get the vote out? So as Susan says, who was a winner, do everything possible. Put it on your website. Put it on all your social medias. Make a signature line for your emails asking people to vote for you. Tell your visitors guide, your chamber, to really get it out on their Facebook pages and in their social media. Send a press release to the local television that you are a BedandBreakfast.com top 16, and let everybody in the world know how to vote for you in as many ways as possible. Leanne at the Weller House says that they promoted their winning recipe and the voting through Facebook ads and through local Facebook groups in their community. They also did email blasts and newsletter blasts to their customer. They said, and this is important, she said she kept flooding it out constantly leading up to each voting day. You got to keep it top of mind with people who will vote for you when it's your day to be voting, when it's the day for them to vote on your recipe. And then, so she spent a couple $100 over the course of the contest to get people to see the ads and asking everybody to share it. And then she said it really helped that her loyal guests who had stayed there promoted it on their personal pages too. So don't be afraid to ask your guests to ask their friends to vote for you too. That's how you're going to see, exponential sets of eyes, and make sure that everyone knows the link to and the date for when to vote for you. Nicole at Brayton B&B says persistency is her tip to all those who enter the contest. She said for her it was a challenge, but she says just keep messaging to vote for you through Facebook, through emails, and through newsletters on your website, and every day get the word out there when to vote for you and where to vote for you. Okay, so that's quick and easy. It's quick and dirty tips for you from innkeepers and also from photographers. Here are the takeaways that I got from what people told us. You want to choose a recipe that's colorful and photographs well. It also needs to be a recipe that you'll enjoy making, because you will. It's a good idea if it tells a nice story. When it comes to photographing that recipe, keep your photos close and keep them simple. Use natural light, and if you're lucky enough to be a finalist, promote the voting relentlessly. Just get the word out every day from the day you find out that you're a winner, from that day on. And then once you win, be sure to tell the world, because you're going to want, I mean, you are going to be a national recipe winner. So you're going to want your local chamber to get the word out. You're going to want to tell your local TV stations. You're going to want to go on food shows that are national, regional, local, wherever you can show off that recipe. You're going to want to, because people are going to come to your inn because of this recipe, your inn or B&B. I did ask innkeepers if they thought that being a winner sold rooms, and in some cases, innkeepers said yes, they thought it did, mostly because of the publicity. Okay, any questions or comments, or if any of our former winners are on this webinar, maybe you have some tips to tell everybody that I haven't had, that I didn't mention. So let's hear it.
Thanks, Marty. That was wonderful. Let's see. Looks like so far we haven't gotten any questions, but we'll give everybody a couple minutes. I can't wait to see all of the recipes. This is always my favorite time of year. We're just in the office drooling over what everybody sends in, so it's fun.
Yeah, those pictures were amazing from the past recipes that were submitted. Just amazing.
I know. Yeah, it's always really fun. We always do in the office, we do a potluck after the contest, and we usually try to make a couple of the winners. And it's really fun. So we look forward to seeing your recipes, everyone.
And in case you tuned in late, don't forget that you can go through this webinar on your own afterwards, because there was a lot of words and ideas and links that you might want to follow right from your own computer.
Yes, indeed. Well, it looks like no more questions have come in, so I guess with that, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Marty. Her contact info is on the slide here, and we'll definitely be sending out the recording in the next couple of days. So we look forward to seeing your recipes, and yeah, let us know if you have any other questions. Thank you, Marty, as always.
And good luck to everybody in the recipe tournament.
Yes, best of luck. All right, everyone, have a good rest of your Tuesday, and we will talk soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.